Hello my friends, this is Dragonheart, the Prince of Wales, and welcome to my channel. Welcome to a battle report where today we have the mighty vampire counts making their debut on my channel in a battle report where I play against my friend Matthew, who is playing as the Dwarves. So you will notice, you eagle-eyed viewers, that there's a cat right there. He is co-hosting today's episode, so big it up for Solus, my ginger and white cat. Anyway, Bit of a quick one this is. So I've actually recorded the battle report off my phone with a microphone at the store. We were the only ones in the store, but there were people back and forth. I don't know what the quality is going to be like when I put this together because I'm recording the intro first. But I haven't had much time lately to put a proper, battle report up on the channel. I'm hoping to do this soon, so this will be hopefully in the next few weeks. I'll be able to get Paul over to my house, use my table, because my own table in my garage, I've got a lot more control over what I'm recording and stuff, and can make it much better. So thank you for being patient, guys, first of all, and hopefully I will get some more battle reports up on the channel soon. But anyway, today's video, it is 1,500 points. It is Mountain Pass, because that's what we rolled for, which is probably my least favorite, or one of my least favorite scenarios that you can play as. With the dwarves, there's a big block of dwarf warriors, there's a runesmith, there are 2 cannons, there's a big unit of slayers, there's a unit of quarrelers, and a unit of iron drakes. You'll see these in a second once we go to the actual recordings that I took. For my vampire counts, I have got my general, who is a level 3 wizard or level 3 necromancer on a mortis engine. He has the talisman of protection, so that gives him a 5-up ward save. So his save goes 4-up armor, 5-up ward, 5-up regen, so 4-up, 5-up, 5-up. So makes him quite potent and quite hard to move off the table. He also has the Scepter of D Noir, I think it's pronounced. It's Noirot. Hopefully, Paul, you'll be able to answer that, being a Frenchman yourself. But it's a magical staff, which means that in your command subphase, after you've done your Invocation of Nehek, you can choose to use the Mighty Staff and try to use Invocation of Nehek for a second time. However, when you use the staff, you do have to roll a d6, and on a roll of a 1, you take a wound. So that's something that you have to be wary of when you do it. I also have a White Lord with BSB. Now, because the White Lord's been upgraded to a BSB, this gives him the White Banner, which is a special rule that he has. So he gets to reroll leadership tests as normal, but he can also be used to change the result of crumbling. So when you're doing your combat res and say you've lost combat by 4, you can roll a d3 and you can subtract the difference. So it's like, right, I've lost by 4, but I've actually just got a 3 on the dice, so I've actually only lost by 1, so only 1 additional dude is dying effectively. So that's quite good and can help negate how many casualties you are taking, which is quite useful. I have a Banshee. I have a unit of 20 zombies with Banner and Musician, because I had a couple of spare points and I was like, yeah, just in case, gives them an extra, something in combat res possibly. So I've done that with them. I have a block of 22 skeleton warriors. They have full command, and they have a banner of hellish vigor, which gives them a reserve move. I have 10 direwolves with a doom wolf, which is a champion. I have 10 crypt ghouls, who also have a champion as well. I have 3 crypt horrors, which is the first time I ever used crypt horrors, so see how they do today. And I have a Terrorgeist. I'm loving the Terrorgeist model, and I'm loving the rules for it. It's quite a potent creature within the vampire count roster, and I'm quite happy with it so far. So I rolled for spells, and the spells that I got are Deathly Cabal, which is a 6-up ward for the caster. Now, I chose to swap this for Dwellers Below, which is an assailment spell, because obviously my caster already has a Talisman of Protection with a 5-up ward save, so it's just pointless taking a Deathly Cabal. So I swapped that for Dwellers Below. I rolled for Unquiet Spirit, which is the magic missile, and I also rolled for Spectral Steed, which is a conveyance spell, which gives a friendly character unit ethereal and fly 10, so it's quite useful. But anyway, that's the key information to have before the battle. Let's go to the table. So we have Mountain Pass, we have the Dwarves versus the Vampire Counts. So on the Vampire Count side by here, we have a Terrorgeist. Next to them, we have the Mortis Engine with Crypt Horrors. In the front line, we have a unit of zombies, we have a Banshee,
And then we have 10 direwolves. Behind the direwolves, we have a unit of spirit hosts. We have a unit of skeleton warriors with full command, and we have a unit of crypt ghouls. And then on the dwarf side, then on the far hand side, we have a big block of slayers. We have a big block of dwarf warriors. We have a couple of artillery pieces on the hill by here. At the front, then we have a unit of thunderers. And then finally we have a unit of iron drakes as well. Okay, so we've had turn 1 of the dwarves. So what's happened here? The slayers have ambled up the board slightly. The direwolves have moved up the board as well. Unfortunately, did lose one model due to fire from the, I think it was the thunderers? The quarrelers? Got that wrong in the intro, but it's the quarrelers. Cannons have taken some shots from the hill. They've looked to get into the crypt horrors and the mortis engine. Fortunately for the vampire counts, the shots have whiffed and the dwarves have more or less remained where they are on the board. Now we're going to vampires turn 2. So vampire counts turn 1. The Terrorgeist has flown from behind the building and has gone up to the other side of the building, looking to hopefully get into some dwarves over there. My wizard unfortunately tried to do a spell and miscast and has taken a wound, so is now down to 7 wounds. All of my centre has basically ambled up the board slightly. My spirit host is just sort of in reserve, but they're not really sure what to do with them at the moment, but they're there. And then over here you'll see the slayers have pushed up a little bit. That's because the direwolves did charge into combat with the slayers, and unfortunately the dogs got cooked. Over now to dwarves turn 2. So that was dwarves turn 2, and what we've had here, the slayers have repositioned themselves, but they're looking straight at the banshee. The rest of the army has more or less stayed where it was. They have taken some artillery pot shots at my Terrorgeist and have whittled the Terrorgeist from 6 wounds down to 4. Now we're going to vampire counts turn 2. So we've just finished vampire counts turn 3. And been interesting. So the Banshee charged the Slayers. They lost 2 Slayers previously due to the direwolves, which I forgot to mention. Unfortunately, the Banshee has one attack, whiffed its attack completely. The Slayers with static combat res 1 by 4. The Banshee being indomitable 1 meant that I lost by 3, crumbled by 3, but she only has 2 wounds, so I've unfortunately lost my Banshee. Probably would have been better if I had looked to get my spirit host charging in first and then assist with the Banshee, but I went with the Banshee first because it was nearer, so a bad on my part. I've moved everything else up a bit further again. I'm trying to keep my army sort of central, just because I want to try and unleash them all when I eventually do get up the board. The dwarves are currently camping as we speak. Better news up this flank though. The Terrorgeist has managed to go from this patch by here, charge up into the Iron Drakes, and has just killed 5 Iron Drakes on 1 combat. It did take another wound on the way in though when they shot him, when they stood and fired. So he's down to 3 wounds remaining, but he did win a round of combat. We now go into the next turn for the dwarves. So we've just had dwarves turn 4, so a little bit of manoeuvring going along with the slayers. They're looking to get a charge into potentially the flank of the zombies. Unfortunately, they failed their charge, so they've just ended up just away from the spirit hosts and the zombies here. A couple of shots were taken onto the crypt horrors. They did take 2 wounds off them, so the crypt horror that was regened has now been deceased again. So even more dead than undead, I suppose. We continue to combat over on this flank by here. The Terrorgeist did win again, causing another wound. Another wound wasn't been able to back onto the Terrorgeist, so we did 1 combat, pushed them back 2 inches, and now we go into turn 4 for the vampire counts. So in this turn, which we both believe was the end of my turn 3, we have lost track of the numbering, unfortunately. The spirit host got into the slayers here, completely whiffed, didn't do anything. Static combat res meant that the slayers won. However, I was able to reduce my indomitable crumbling by the white banner from my white lord per there. So rather than losing by 4, I lost by 1, so I only took 1 wound, so we got 1 down to 3 wounds there. The rest have gone up the board. My mortis engine is starting to get into range where it might be able to do a few things in the remaining turns of the game. Crypt horrors are there, sort of shielding them in front, and then the Terrorgeist has again 1 combat over here. Still has 3 wounds remaining and has whittled them down to just 2 models remaining. over now to the Dwarves next turn. So we just had Dwarves turn 4. Spirit Hosts, again, doing slightly better this time. Only lost the 1 wound this time against the Slayers, and actually did kill 2 Slayers as well, which is fantastic. So combat rumbles on there. Everything else stays where it is in the middle, although you'll notice that the Crypt Horrors are no longer there. That is because they have been shot to death by Matthew's artillery. Thank you for that, Matthew. And then we have the Terrorgeist, which you'll notice is no longer in combat on the bottom of the hill because he won his combat, didn't take a wound, took the 2 remaining dwarves out, was overrun and gone into the artillery piece on top of the hill by here, ready for my turn. Okay, so we just finished Tomb King's turn 4. Combat continuing on my left flank here. You'll notice that the Spirit Hosts have lost a host. That is because we lost combat by 2 and the remaining 2 wounds have been taken off. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to save the crumbling with my white banner, with my white lord by here, because he's now too far away, because the main bulk of my army have now moved up to try and get into range of the dwarves. You'll notice over here that the Terrorgeist won combat against the cannon and he's stranded. That is because in the previous turn of the dwarves, the Terrorgeist won combat, overrun and got into combat with the cannon. Then in my turn, during the shooting phase, I was able to use Wailing Dirge, because you can use it in combat, and Matthew unfortunately failed his leadership test by rolling double 6, so he lost by 4, lost the cannon and crew, and we were really unsure what happens with this scenario, because technically I've won combat before the combat phase, because I did it in the shooting phase. So do I overrun? Do I test to restrain? Do I just stay stranded? We're not really sure. We've played it so that I'm staying where I am, so I haven't moved at all. I'm just stranded here. But if you do know the answer, please let us know. Now we go into Matthew's next turn. So we've just finished Dwarves turn 5, and it's been a massacre. So the Spirit Hosts are now down to 1 with static combat res. Lost by 4. They have 4 wounds each, so 1 Spirit Host unfortunately fell. I tried my 4 regens and failed all of them, so that's what's happened there. We've had combat here with the Quarrelers, not Thunderers as I mentioned earlier. The Quarrelers charged into my Mortis Engine. Mortis Engine offered a challenge, champion declined and has gone to the back, and basically combat has come to a stalemate. Over here, you'll see the Terrorgeist is no more, unfortunately. This massive block of Dwarf Warriors got into its flank, did a lot of damage, and unfortunately for me, died. So he had 3 wounds remaining, and I took 4 wounds, and yeah, not good. But there we go, on to Vampire Counts turn 5. So we've just completed the Undead turn 5. We are down to 2 remaining wounds on the Spirit Host, but this combat's been going on for most of the game. In the big centre, you've got a conglomerate of undead and battles and all sorts of things going on. So we lost combat by 1. We did take 2 Quarrelers away. We did lose 2 zombies, and we did lose 1 Crypt Ghoul as well. So the Crypt Ghouls and the Mortis Engine have given ground 2 inches, but the zombies stay exactly where they are in combat because they can't go backwards because of the Skeleton Warriors being there. Over to the next turn. Okay, so we just completed Dwarfs and Matthew's final turn of the game, turn 6. So the Slayers were victorious. They defeated the Spirit Hosts. That battle has been going on for about 4 turns, I think, so it's been on for ages. But the Slayers killed the monster in the end. In the middle right here, we had the zombies fighting against the Quarrelers. It's basically a stalemate. I lost 3, but with static combat res, it was a draw, and everything just stays the same because they can't go backwards. And then the Dwarf Warriors have shuffled around and repositioned slightly just to try and get out of range a little bit as well. And now we go into the Vampire Count's final turn of the game. So with that, we've completed the game. We're at the final turn of the Undead. So basically what happened, the zombies were in combat, the Crypt Ghouls followed up into the combat as well. The Mortis Engine attempted to scream and was able to take an additional couple of wounds off the Quarrelers. We then had combat, and we ended up winning combat by a few. Unfortunately, the Dwarves failed their leadership check and ended up fleeing. And I pursued with the zombies, which matched it with a 5 on the dice, and the Crypt Ghouls had an 8 on the dice and basically caught them. So The Quarrelers and the Runesmith were all defeated on the final turn of the game.
So there we have it, guys. That was the battle report. But you're probably wondering what was the final result. So I can tell you. So after we calculated all of the units that had been defeated on the battlefield, the Dwarves scored 673 points and the Vampire Counts scored 476 points. So it was a 197 point difference. So it's a very small minor win for the Dwarves. I'm not 100% sure what that would be points wise if this was a tournament. I think it'd be quite close, but if you do know, please let me know in the comment section below. Speaking of letting me know things in the comment section below, you'll notice halfway through the game there was that sort of like, I don't want to say dispute, but it was the Terrorgeist who was in combat with the artillery piece. It's in combat. In my shooting phase, I screamed at it and took all the wounds off it. So combat was no longer there, was it? I'd screamed at it. But we're not really sure what happens next, because does the Terrorgeist just stay where it is? Does it still get the resolution that you would usually get at the end of a combat, where it can reform, or where it can test a restrain, or it can overrun or whatever? Like, it's basically one combat, but it's one combat in the shooting phase and not in the traditional combat phase. But because of the Wailing Dirge rule, you can scream at something you're in combat with in your shooting phase. That's how it works. It's actually worded like that. So I'm not sure. I would like to know, because it's probably going to come up again with me playing Vampire Counts, so I will need to know this for the future. So if you do know, please let me know in the comment section below what would happen. Overall, very enjoyable game. I did better with my list than I thought I would. When he told me he was playing Dwarves, I thought, oh, here we go. Dwarves, they're going to camp, they're going to just use lots of artillery, they're going to shoot the absolute hell out of me, and it's going to be awful. And then especially when we rolled and got Mountain Pass, where you start much further away on the board as well, I just thought, oh, I'm a sitting duck. I'm going to have to try my best to maneuver and do something with this. But what ended up happening was, if we talk about it from flank to flank, left flank, he had his Slayers that were quite far forward, so I basically goaded and charged with my Direwolves. I knew I wasn't going to win combat, but I was hoping to sort of pin them down there for a little bit to get my other forces up much quicker, obviously with like reserve move and stuff, with like Crypt Ghouls and Skeleton Warriors and stuff. What ended up happening was the Slayers just wiped out the Dwarves straight away in like one turn, so there wasn't even another turn of combat. It's like, right, boom boom boom, you're all dead. Of course, Direwolves have like no armor and is a 6-up regen, which I just did not roll 1/6, so they all ended up dying and crumbling and whatever. So they went. That was fun. But the good thing was the Slayers sort of overran, and then that gave me the opportunity to get into combat with them with the Banshee. The mistake that I made was that my Spirit Hosts, I'm pretty sure I either forgot to move them one turn, which I think is what happened, or I just did not move them as effectively. The point I'm making is, I got into combat with my Banshee against a big block of Slayers. Even though the Slayers couldn't hit it because they didn't have any magical weapons, my Banshee only has one attack, and it whiffed that one attack, did not do any damage whatsoever. And then the Slayers ended up winning on static combat res, because their static combat res with their ranks and banners and stuff was 4. So it was like 4-0. Indomitable won, so you're losing by 3. And then you're rolling your regens and you're failing them, and then your Banshee's dead. So what I should have done was get the Spirit Hosts into combat with the Banshee at the same time. But I think I was so tempted, because they were so close, the Banshee was so close, it could not fail the charge. I think I was just sort of like, I'm going to charge her. What I should have done was hold for a turn and try and scream at it, or I should have maneuvered to get behind the line of sight of the Slayers, had a turn of screaming at them, and then maybe go for a charge with the Spirit Host at the same time. That's what I should have done. That's the mistake I made on that flank. But the Spirit Host did okay. They didn't, like, they lost, but they tied up a big unit of Slayers for the entire game pretty much. So they kept them at bay, which was good for me. The right flank, the Terrorgeist did really well. I started the battle with the Terrorgeist behind the building, so it couldn't get shot at by any artillery, because I learned from recent memories and recent battles of playing 1,000 point battles with Paul and the people that he plays with. everyone just seemed to be shooting my Terrorgeist, and the base is so big I could not get it behind anything. But the way that the building was positioned, when we put the terrain down, I'd put it flat and lengthways, so I made sure that my Terrorgeist went behind it for the first turn, so that when the Dwarves had their first turn, it could not be targeted. So then when it got into my first turn, then it was literally a case of, I'm going to march, I'm going to fly up the board. I flew as far as I could, and then when I got to my next turn, then I was in a position where I could swift stride and charge into the enemy Iron Drakes, which is what I did. Got into the Iron Drakes, had a few turns of combat with the Iron Drakes, but won combat eventually. I did suffer a few wounds on the way. I went from a 6 wound down to like a 4 wound, then in combat down to like a 3 wound. Overran once I defeated the Iron Drakes, got into the artillery, screamed at the artillery, and won that, which is obviously the point I made earlier on. And I'd like to know what you guys think of that. Do I, because I shot at them in the shooting phase, even though I'm in combat with them, does that now mean that I can reform or whatever, or just stay as a sitting deck? We played it that I stayed as a sitting deck, and that's exactly what happened. He had a big block of, I think it was 32 Dwarf warriors, and they had their lord in there. They had different runes and all sorts, and they just came into my flank of my Terrorgeist and just won combat quite easily. And I ended up missing my regens and stuff, and that was it then. So yeah, that happened on the right flank, but I got rid of an artillery piece and another unit, so it was kind of worth it in a way. I think it made the points back. So that was sort of the 2 flanks. In the middle of the board then, it was a case of ambling everything up the middle. Obviously, I'm quite slow, but I got up quite quickly, really, because my Mortis engine gives +1 movement to everything. It's like command range, which was pretty much everything in the center of the board. So my zombies were now running. They went from 4 to 5 movement. My skeleton warriors went from 4 to 5 movement, plus they had a reserve move. The ghouls had a reserve move as well, the crypt horror, so everything just sort of moved as a block, as one. I tried something a bit different for this game because I didn't want to give Matthew a sitting duck that he could charge. That was kind of what, even though he's far away and his game plan was going to be shooting, I wanted to keep my entire army together, where one, I could just I could get into combat with something and just overwhelm it, and 2, I'm in position where I can heal anything anyway. So with the crypt horrors, they were in front of the Mortis engine, so he kept trying to shoot, so it would hit the crypt horrors, follow through and hit the Mortis engine. He did take a wound at one point off the Mortis engine, but next turn I just regened it and got it back with Invocation of Nehek anyway, so it did make a difference. But with the crypt horrors, he did basically artillery fire them down the entire game and eventually did lose them. At one point I lost the model. Following turn brought the model back because I was on 6 wounds out of 9, and then with Invocation of Nehek on Crypt Horrors you just get 1 additional wound. Got the additional wound back, got him back on the board, and then he got blown off the board straight away then in Matthew's next turn. But that was just like almost like a screen for my Mortis engine and everything else. Eventually I got up the board and into his Quarrelers. He had a Runesmith and his Quarrelers in that block. And just by sheer numbers of zombies, I had the zombies with the banner and the musician. And by this point, I think I had like 36 or 37 zombies. So I had like rank bonuses and stuff as well. And with the Horde rule, you can claim an additional combat res point as well, which was great. So I had that. I had the Crypt Ghouls, hopefully doing a few things. Didn't do much, to be fair, but they were there just to try and cause a bit of damage, and by sheer numbers, and then obviously the Mortis engine being there as well, I was able to overwhelm and take them out at the end of the game then. So I couldn't get up the board as far as I wanted to. I could have marched the Mortis engine up there, because it can fly 8, so I could have marched up there 16. It's the only thing that could have marched apart from the Terrorgeist. Anything that flies in vampires can march, everything else can't. Due to the necromantic undead special rule, but I could have done that, but then I think the Mortis engine would have been a sit-in deck, so I think I played it. I think the game plan was sound, the execution could have been better, but to lose by 197 on Mountain Pass when your army is clearly at a disadvantage in matchup type, when they've got artillery and stuff and they can just camp on the hill and say come at me bro, and I've got to come at them, I think I did okay. Better than I thought I would, and I'm quite pleased with that. I'm looking forward to having more Vampire Count battles in the coming weeks. I'm probably going to be using Vampire Counts in the Welsh Open tournament that's coming up at the end of October. I'm still thinking about what I'm going to do for a 2,000 point list. I definitely have some options. I've also got some models over there that need to be painted up as well. So that's what I'm going to be working on over the next few weeks now. But anyway, guys, I hope you've enjoyed. I've been Dragonheart. Until next time, goodbye.